On my wedding morning, a text from my future mother-in-law shattered me. "We've taken your dress. The venue's cancelled. Your fiancé agrees." My hands trembled as I called him. But when I arrived at the ceremony, it wasn't me who was shocked, it was them who got the surprise. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of my small apartment in Charleston, bathing the room in a warm glow. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My wedding day. After months of meticulous planning, dress fittings, menu tastings, guest list revisions, and late-night Pinterest spirals, it had finally arrived. I stretched lazily, still half asleep, the scent of gardenia from my bouquet lingering faintly in the air. And then my phone buzzed. I thought it might be a sweet message from my fiancé, Nathan. Or maybe my maid of honor, Chloe, sending a funny selfie in her bridesmaid robe. But no. The sender's name made my blood run cold. Vivian Reynolds. Nathan's mother. The text was short. Cruel. "We've taken your dress. The venue is cancelled. Nathan agrees this is for the best. Don't cause a scene." I blinked at the screen, waiting for my eyes to adjust. This had to be a mistake. A prank? A dream? My heart started pounding like a war drum in my chest. My fingers moved on their own, dialing Nathan's number. Straight to voicemail. Again. Again. Still voicemail. I tried Chloe next. No answer. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled out of bed and ran to the closet. The ivory gown I had picked with my mother last fall, the one I had cried over in the boutique, the one that hugged my waist like it had been sewn by angels, was gone. So were the pearl heels. The veil. Even the little blue ribbon I had pinned inside the dress for luck. I stood in the middle of the room, barefoot, my robe slipping off one shoulder, my hands trembling uncontrollably. This wasn't a nightmare. This was real. I called the venue in desperation. A soft-voiced woman on the other end hesitated before finally admitting, yes. Nathan called earlier this morning. He said the wedding was off. Everything has been cancelled. I'm really sorry. Sorry? Sorry? I could barely hear her over the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed. Tears streamed down my face, but I wasn't even crying. I wasn't sure what this emotion was. It wasn't sadness. Not yet. It was confusion. Embarrassment. Rage starting to simmer beneath the surface like lava. They planned this. Not just Nathan. But Vivian. That woman had never liked me. She masked it well in front of him, smiling, gifting me little trinkets for the house, but behind closed doors, she was ruthless. "You're too loud," she once said. Too ambitious. She made it clear I was not the wife she wanted for her perfect son. But this? This wasn't just sabotage. This was a coordinated takedown. They'd waited until the morning of the wedding to humiliate me, hoping I'd just slink away and disappear quietly, too broken to resist. They thought I'd fold. They didn't know me at all. I stood up slowly, fury tightening my jaw. My reflection in the mirror startled me, wild hair, tear-streaked cheeks, hollow eyes, but beneath the mess, I saw steel. I yanked on jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and marched out the door. I was going to find Nathan. Or Vivian. Or whoever dared to answer. I didn't know what I was going to say. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not even close. The drive to the venue was a blur. Charleston's cobblestone streets zipped past like a memory I was trying to outrun. I didn't feel the steering wheel under my hands. Didn't register the gasping text messages starting to flood in from distant relatives wondering what was happening. All I could hear was that damn message playing on a loop in my mind, "Don't make a scene. Just accept it." Vivian Reynolds didn't know me. When I pulled into the church parking lot, I expected silence. I expected it to be empty. After all, the wedding had been cancelled, Nathan's mother said so. But no. Cars filled every space. Guests were arriving, dressed to the nines, smiling like this was any other Saturday celebration. My stomach twisted. I stepped out of my car, barely aware of the curious glances. Familiar faces waved at me. Some smiled in confusion. A few even said, "Ava. You're glowing." They didn't know. The betrayal was invisible to them. I was the ghost bride, still wearing yesterday's mascara and fury. I pushed the doors open and walked inside. The sight nearly dropped me to my knees. The church was decorated exactly the way I had planned, down to the silver eucalyptus runners and cream roses. My dream. My theme. My vision. It was all there. And so was she. At the altar, in my gown, stood Julia, a girl I once called a friend. Someone who had sat in my living room eating takeout, giggling about bachelorette party ideas. She'd known Nathan for years, had always been close. Too close. I should have seen it. The long hugs. The way she said his name. The way she watched him when she thought I wasn't looking. Now here she was, wearing my dress, adjusting my veil. Standing next to my fiancé. The air left my lungs. Nathan looked relaxed. Serene, even. Like this was normal. Like he hadn't orchestrated the most humiliating betrayal I'd ever endured. And Vivian? Oh, Vivian was glowing with pride. Standing in the front pew like the queen of some twisted play. She turned, and saw me. For the first time, her smile faltered. I kept walking. No one stopped me. Maybe they didn't dare. Maybe they thought this was part of the show. When I reached the front, Vivian stepped forward to block me. You shouldn't be here, she hissed through clenched teeth. I smiled. Oh, I think I should. The whispering started. Eyes widened. Guests began murmuring. I spotted my cousin Elise, staring at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Chloe, my so-called best friend and maid of honor, was frozen beside Julia, face pale. I looked at her. You knew, I said softly. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Shame writhed in her expression like smoke. Vivian reached for my arm. You need to leave now. I shrugged her off and stepped forward. Nathan, I said. My voice didn't shake. How long have you been planning this? He looked stunned for a moment. But not guilty, no. Just, inconvenienced. Like I was ruining a surprise party. Nathan, I said again, louder. How long? Julia fidgeted beside him. Ava, please. We didn't mean. You didn't mean to steal my wedding? I snapped. My venue, my dress, my fiancé? Dead silence. And then I pulled out my phone. I thought I'd let you all hear something, I said. I tapped play. Vivian's voice echoed through the chapel speakers, we've taken your dress. The venue is cancelled. Nathan agrees this is for the best. Gasps. Then Nathan's voice, you're just not good enough, Ava. Julia's better suited for me. The effect was instant. You could hear the sound of reality crashing down. Julia looked like she'd been slapped. She stepped away from Nathan, trembling. Vivian's face lost all color. I took a breath. Looked Julia in the eye. Still want him? She bolted. And that? That was just the beginning. For a moment, everything stood still. The audio recording lingered in the air like gunpowder, and the silence that followed was heavier than any scream. People shifted in their seats, jaws slack, whispers breaking out like a wave in a quiet sea. Nathan's mouth was slightly open. His eyes darted between me and the guests like a man drowning in his own wedding. Julia was pale as chalk. Her hands, still gripping the bouquet, trembled. She took one shaky step back, away from Nathan, then turned to me. I didn't know he said that, she whispered, her voice cracking. You didn't know? I laughed, sharp and bitter. You're wearing my dress. You're standing in the church I booked. And you didn't know? Julia opened her mouth again, but this time, Vivian stepped forward, snapping like a snake. That's enough. This is your fault, she snarled at me, her voice dripping with venom. If you had just left quietly. I cut her off. You planned this. All of it. Vivian's lips curled. I protected my son. No, I said coldly. You manipulated him. You picked out a new bride like ordering a replacement part. But you didn't think she might snap too, did you? Julia suddenly threw her bouquet to the floor. I'm not your replacement part, she said, her voice trembling, rising. I'm not her. I'm not here to just play along. Vivian tried to reach for her. Julia, stop. This is not the time. Oh no, Julia snapped, stepping out of reach. You don't get to control me anymore. Nathan finally found his voice. What are you doing? He hissed. Julia looked at him, eyes blazing. Tell her. Tell her why this really happened. Nathan's face contorted. Julia. Tell her, she screamed, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. And then it came. Quiet, almost inaudible, she's pregnant. I staggered back. Pregnant. The word echoed in my head like a siren. Some guests gasped. One woman actually dropped her clutch, the loud clack of it hitting the floor cutting through the stunned silence. Julia stared at me, eyes wide and shining with tears. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I thought, her voice broke. I thought he loved me. I could feel my knees shaking. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I had no tears left for either of them. Vivian turned sharply. This is good, she said quickly, as if trying to take control again. A child is a blessing. A fresh start. Julia recoiled. A blessing? Is that what you told me when you said I'd be perfect for him? When you said I'd be the new face of your precious family? You didn't care about me. You just wanted a baby. An heir. Vivian flinched, then scoffed. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, Julia said, her voice suddenly steadier. I'm being honest. You used me. Just like you tried to erase her, she pointed at me. And now I see it. I was never going to be part of this family. Not really. I was just useful. Nathan looked stunned. Julia, you're overreacting. Julia laughed, bitter and broken. I gave up everything for you. I lied for you. I destroyed someone I once called my friend. And now I see it, you don't love me either. You love what I can give you. The church was dead silent again. All eyes were on the altar. The fake bride. The fake groom. And the real fallout. I'm keeping the baby, Julia said. But I'm done with you. And then she turned to me. I know it's too late. I can't undo what I've done. But I swear, I was lied to, too. I was just a different kind of victim. I said nothing. What was there to say? Julia walked down the aisle, past the rows of shocked faces, past me, and out the doors. Nathan didn't follow. Vivian stood frozen, lips trembling with rage, fists clenched at her sides. And me? I had never felt more alive. Julia's footsteps echoed through the church as she disappeared out the doors, leaving only silence, and the ruin she'd helped create. I turned slowly, letting the moment sink in. Nathan stared at the floor like it might offer him some kind of escape. Vivian's breath came in shallow, panicked huffs, her mouth tight, her posture rigid. The proud matriarch now looked like a shattered statue, trying not to crack in front of the crowd. But the crowd had already seen everything. And I wasn't done. I walked to the center of the altar, where Julia had stood only minutes before. Since we're already gathered, I said, my voice calm and clear, I thought I'd share one last surprise. Whispers swept through the pews like wind through dry leaves. My cousin Elise leaned forward, wide-eyed. In the back, a man actually started recording on his phone. Vivian took a step toward me. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? I smiled. Oh, Vivian. You think I'm the one who should be embarrassed? And then I pulled the folded envelope from my coat pocket. This, I said, holding it up, is a copy of the financial agreement Nathan and I signed before the wedding. You know, the one you insisted we didn't need? Good thing I didn't listen. Vivian's face turned an alarming shade of gray. Nathan blinked. What are you talking about? I unfolded the paper slowly, letting the silence stretch. It's a legally binding document. In it, Nathan agreed to cover all costs related to the wedding in the event of a cancellation. And since you canceled, Nathan. I glanced at the audience, then back at him. You owe me $42,850. Gasps. Audible gasps. Vivian looked like she might faint. You can't be serious. I can, I said, and I am. Just then, the church doors opened once more. And in walked my lawyer. A tall man in a navy suit, briefcase in hand, radiating the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're about to win. He strode down the aisle like it was a runway. Apologies for the interruption, he said to the guests, then turned to me. Miss Carter, everything is prepared. The documents have been filed. We'll proceed with civil charges by Monday if the payment isn't made. Nathan looked like someone had kicked the ground out from beneath him. This is crazy, he muttered. My lawyer didn't even look at him. No, Mr. Reynolds. This is consequences. Vivian started sputtering. You planned this whole scene, just to ruin him? I turned to her, ice cold. No, Vivian. You ruined him. I just held up the mirror. The guests were dead quiet now, as if they were afraid to miss a single syllable. Chloe, my supposed best friend, finally stepped forward, her face blotchy and eyes red. Ava. I need to tell you something. I raised a brow. Now you want to talk? She swallowed. I knew. About the switch. Vivian told me weeks ago that you weren't going to be the bride anymore. She said if I told you, she'd make sure I never worked in the city again. What are you talking about? I asked, trying to wrap my head around the weight of it. Chloe looked down, ashamed. I work at Vivian's firm. I'm a junior architect. She threatened to fire me. She said she'd blacklist me. Vivian didn't deny it. She simply rolled her eyes. I handle problems. That's what I do. I stared at her. Manipulating your son, threatening my friends, replacing me like I'm a defective product, that's how you handle problems? She didn't respond. But the silence was louder than words. I turned to Chloe. You should have told me. I know, she whispered, tears falling. I'm so sorry. But I didn't have the energy to sort through her apology. Not today. There were too many knives in my back to count. I took one last look at Nathan. You let your mother destroy your life. And for what? A fantasy? A lie? Look around you, Nathan. There's nothing left. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there. Empty. And I felt something break free inside me. The weight was gone. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to cry. I had already won. With one final glance at the people who had tried to erase me, I turned to my lawyer and nodded. Let's go. And together, we walked out the church doors, into a future they could never touch. It's been 6 months since that day. 6 months since I walked out of the church I was never meant to enter, past the altar where my future had been hijacked, and into a world that felt unfamiliar, but mine. Entirely, irrevocably mine. The headlines lasted for weeks. Runaway bride crashes groom's wedding to her ex-best friend. The $40,000 betrayal, inside the wedding that wasn't. Everyone had an opinion. Some sympathized, others gawked. But me? I went quiet. I packed a suitcase, closed the door to my apartment in Charleston, and left. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Chloe. Not Elise. Definitely not Nathan. For the first time in years, I stopped asking for permission to disappear. And in the silence that followed, I began to breathe again. I rented a tiny cottage outside Asheville. It smelled like cedar and rain and wood smoke. The kitchen was too small, the windows creaked, and the garden was overrun with wild rosemary. I loved it immediately. It didn't remind me of him. Or her. Or the girl I used to be, desperate to be chosen. I stopped checking social media. I deleted the wedding planning boards. I unsubscribed from the bridal mailing lists that once made my heart flutter. Instead, I started going for walks. Long ones. I brought a camera with me, not to post, not to perform, but just to notice. The way the sunlight filtered through moss. The sound of river stones tumbling underfoot. The quiet rhythm of the earth still turning, even after my world had shattered. And slowly, without fanfare, I began to heal. The rage melted first. It took time. But one morning, while sipping tea and watching a deer pick its way through my overgrown backyard, I realized I hadn't thought about Vivian in days. Her voice, once so loud in my head, had dulled to nothing. No more imagined arguments. No more what I should have said. Just stillness. Nathan's messages eventually stopped. At first, they came weekly. I made a mistake. Can we talk? Then they turned desperate. You don't understand the pressure I was under. I didn't reply. Not once. Not because I was punishing him. But because I no longer needed to be heard by someone who had never listened. Rachel moved out of state. I heard it through Elise. No one's really seen her since the scandal. I hope she finds peace. She was cruel, yes. But she was also used, manipulated, and discarded the second she stopped being useful. In some twisted way, we were mirrors of each other. The difference was, I walked away. She stayed just long enough to break. Vivian? Well, karma didn't come in a blaze. It came quietly. The firm lost major clients. Her name turned sour in the industry. And when Nathan's business took a hit from the scandal, she did what she always did, she turned on him. I hear they no longer speak. No Christmas cards. No family dinners. Just silence where the empire once stood. And me? I began again. I got a job at a local design studio, small, but full of heart. I work with people who greet me every morning with real smiles. I found friends who don't look over their shoulder when they laugh too loudly. People who don't try to mold me, or measure me against some invisible scale of wife material. I bought a new dress. Not for a wedding. For me. It's bright yellow, not white. I wore it to a summer solstice party in the woods, barefoot, laughing under lanterns. There was no cake, no vows, no expectations. Just music. Just joy. One night, sitting on the porch as fireflies danced, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who cried over centerpiece colors and worried if she was enough. I wanted to hold her hand. Tell her, you are not someone's placeholder. You are not an accessory in their family's legacy. You are your own story. And you don't need revenge to be free. The world wanted a spectacle. A courtroom showdown. A public takedown. But I chose something harder. I chose peace. I chose not to chase apologies. Not to demand closure from people incapable of giving it. I chose a life they would never understand. One that didn't revolve around their approval. And in that choice, I found a revenge they'd never see coming. I was happy. Truly, quietly, defiantly happy. And that, my love, is the kind of revenge no one can take away.